we have some Christian music reviews to get to. Just a few things that I wanted to talk about. So we're going to do that right right now. All right, look at that. See, this is another reason why I don't like the black bars, because I have these graphics that are set up and I can't. Anyways. So, first, we're going to talk about the Worship Initiative. Behold the Story. They came out with a new album very soon after their previous, they released their most recent Worship Initiative volume project, but they've released this new album, Behold the Story, and I listened to it, and it's a decent worship album and a good resource for access to good worship songs. That's kind of basically what Worship Initiative does, is that well, I wouldn't say popular, but they take a lot of worship songs that they like and they cover them in a very simplistic but still very well arranged track. And I thought, since this wasn't a Worship Initiative volume project thing, it was under a different name, Behold the Story, I thought that it would be a little different, but it doesn't seem to really be any different than most of their other previous projects. So I'm just not really sure what makes this album special and why it was released just a couple months after their last album. It's just kind of a run of the mill Worship Initiative album, which is not bad. It just it didn't really speak out to me too much. There was still a lot of worship covers in the song. Some good stuff. They got some Sandra McCracken. They also do have some, Bethel songs. So if you're not cool with that, then you can avoid the album. But I personally I'm much more comfortable with people covering the good Bethel songs rather than listening to Bethel themselves. I mean, because let's just be honest, Bethel, every once in a while they'll have a good they'll have a good song. Same for Hillsong. So, but there's still some good stuff in there. Uh, but it's decent. It is a decent album, just not really sure why it exists. But yeah, I don't know. And then next up, speaking of worship, we got some Sovereign Grace music. And I'm a big fan of Sovereign Grace. And this is Unchanging God, songs from the Book of Psalms, Volume 2, live. Their previous album, Volume 1, I enjoyed. And in this, this is no exception when it comes to their quality of music. Very memorable melodies and beautiful arrangements. And the lyrics are just on point, and I mean, they're all based on Psalms, scriptures from Psalms, and so of course the theology is going to be quite sound, and they're just perfect songs for a congregational setting as well as for personal worship. There are a lot of songs that I put on my own uh, prayer worship playlist, so I highly recommend Unchanging God, songs from the Book of Psalms, Volume 2, some from Sovereign Grace music. And now, switching it up from worship to alternative, we got the big guys. They're back. Anberlin, which, speaking of which, we talked about them. Benjamin Daniel mentioned them. He's a fan, and so they're back. And I talked about their single last time, but now they have an EP, Silverline EP. Well, it's just called Silverline, and Anberlin are back and better than ever, in my opinion. I think this is a great little collection of new songs from them, and it's very fresh. It's it still feels like Anberlin, but it's very fresh. And one thing that I've always appreciated about Anberlin is that they're pretty hard, hard rock band. I wouldn't call them punk necessarily. Maybe their earlier stuff was more punk, but they've always had they've always been inspired by a lot of 80s music before, like, 80s nostalgia in music was cool. They were always about that, and it's very prevalent in here, and it sounds great. I think it's amazing that they're able to still have the heavy sound that they have, and yet still have this great production, very 80s synth, new wave influence on the music, and it's some really great production. And they go in a lot of cool directions, and the songs are catchy as well. I mean, they're dark and moody, but I mean that's Anberlin for you, and still very catchy. So I'm glad that Anberlin are back, and I hope they do a whole album again. I hope this isn't just a temporary thing, but they were always one of my favorite bands growing up, and so it's good to see them back. And last but not least, so last time we talked about Marcus Mumford, and I'm talking about him again because yes, he is more known in the secular world because Mumford and Sons is a secular band, big in the secular world. But Marcus Mumford is a self-professing Christian, and so he's got his own solo stuff coming out, solo album coming out, and his new single Grace is out, and I think it's great. It's a lot more upbeat than the last single, but not any less profound. And I mentioned last time that pretty much this whole album is inspired by abuse that he was victim to at some point in his life. He's not been open about that, but he's being pretty bloody open about this in his lyricism, and it's I'm seeing a lot of themes having to do with forgiveness and grace, and that's what this song is. If you watch the music video too, you kind of realize, oh, the song, even though it's upbeat, it has more of a deeper meaning to it, and how grace is very cleansing. And yeah. So, and also I mentioned last time that Blake Mills is the producer, and his production identity on this is very prevalent in this one. And so Blake Mills just does a great job at experimenting with a lot of different sounds and keeping it interesting. So I highly recommend Grace from Marcus Mumford, and I'm really excited for the rest of the album. Agent Serenity says, "You speak in my language. I'll be sure to check this out." I think I assume that you were talking about Anberlin, but yeah, I do recommend it for sure.
Hey, so I don't know if you guys know this, but what you just watched was basically just a clip of a full podcast episode of my podcast, The I'm Clifford Today Show. So you should just go check out that whole episode. Also, while you're at it, you might as well like the video and subscribe to my channel. That'd be really nice. I mean, you're nice people, right? Okay.